I just want to start by saying, so that you all know, 12 hours ago I was sitting in the Punta Gorda airport where it was 70 plus degrees. To come back to what is 30 degrees, we almost didn't get on the plane, but I didn't want to have somebody fill in at the last minute this class. So I hope you feel appreciated, or that I'm back because of you, not because I wanted to be, but we were able to go down last Friday and spend time with Amanda and Gordon and the kids, and they all send their love and warmth to you. So as we start our class this evening, though, I've asked Kenny Kern to lead us in a prayer. And as we start our class this evening, one of the things that Nikki's here tonight, but one of the things just to kind of, if you would, when you make a comment, if you try to be loud, because what happens is when folks are streaming, when you're talking, it's like I forgot what I'm supposed to say because I'm just standing here with nothing. So there's nothing here saying somebody's talking. It's just me looking like I'm goofy. So. Yeah, I can't do anything about the buffering, but if you would speak a little louder, if you make a comment, which comments are great. I only have 20 minutes of notes, so we need 20 minutes of comments. We will have me just saying looking goofy, and I can't juggle, so we're in trouble. But so just as a note, if you do make a comment, try to talk a little bit louder, and then I'll try to paraphrase what you say. So as we get into our class. Yeah, well, I've offered to do that, but they said I can't. So I would have one of those big long sticks that's just kind of, yeah, or another one, or I'll just throw you the mic. And so, but if just as a courtesy to those who would be streaming, when there is silence, if someone is making comments, which we welcome. And like I said, I'll try to paraphrase for those who are listening, streaming online, what the comments are, because comments are what helps us with this class.
And you've done really well with that. I will say, as a person who watches live stream, you've done very well with repeating the comments.
And I tried. So, but as my wife says, I don't always listen well, so I may not catch what you said. Yeah. But just so you know now, that's why. What they said may not be what I said, but anyway. So we're studying the fruit of the Spirit. It consists of 9 characteristics, and they're listed in They're listed in Galatians 5, 22 through 23. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such there is no law. As we study the fruit of the Spirit, we must keep in mind the principles revealed in Galatians chapter 6, 7, and 8. Galatians 6, 7, and 8 says, Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, he shall also reap. For he that soweth to the flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption. But he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. So we will reap basically what we sow. And to reap everlasting life, we must sow in the Spirit. So the degree that we possess these 9 characteristics is an indication of how we are sowing. So when we think about this class on Wednesday nights and we're looking at the fruit of the Spirit, we're not going to spend time talking about the works of the flesh. You can look at those on your own. That might be a whole other class topic some other time, but for this class, we're dealing with what we can be as the fruits of the Spirit, how we can have those things in our lives as Christians. And as it says in Galatians 6, we reap what we sow. And so the life that we live, we're sowing seeds, good or bad, but we are sowing seeds. Tonight we're going to talk about long-suffering. And depends on your translation. It could be peace or it could be long-suffering. We live in a society that's known as instant gratification. You know, obviously that changed March of last year. Before, pretty much you could get anything that you want anytime that you want it. You can go, a lot of drive-thrus were open 24 hours. Several years ago I had a customer in Cincinnati and he owned like 20 Waffle Houses. And so when we went to lunch, we went to Waffle House. And one of the things that he was most proud of is the fact that when they open up when they're doing construction, they lock the door. Once they open up a Waffle House, they usually throw away the key because they never close. Well, with the pandemic and all those things, Waffle House is closed. They weren't open 24 hours a day any longer. And now, I don't know whether they're open 24 hours a day now, but they are open again. They're not. Karen Alkire says they're not. So.
Yeah, we had an experience when we were somewhere here recently that they were closing because they didn't have staff.
So there's a lot of factors that come into today's issues, and staffing is a big issue. So, and when we think about one of the points to be made tonight is from a patient side, from long-suffering side, is now what we deal with in our society where we have that. And the question is then how do we respond? So when we go to Bob Evans and they say it'll be a 45-minute wait, you look and there's two people sitting there, you know, how do you show your frustration? Or do you just smile and say, okay, I'll get up my phone and I'll just play a game? Or do we become a jerk because someone is doing their job and it's minimized? Because the world we live in today, that's a norm now. And how we respond is not a norm, because the norm is to fly off the cuff, to say things or do things that it's not that person's fault, but it's where we live today. Here's something on instant gratification. As per psychology, the definition of instant gratification is opting for immediate pleasure now instead of a better return in the future. You feel like you want something and you want it now, right now. Even though you know patience and discipline will yield a better reward, you cannot resist the urge of indulging in immediate bliss. Around the year 1970, Walter Mischel, a professor at Stanford University, conducted a marshmallow test. Obviously, in 1970, marshmallows meant a lot more than they do today. He chose children between the ages of 3.5 and 5.5 years. He gathered them in a room and put them through a test. The child was given one marshmallow in his hand. If he could resist the urge for 15 minutes without eating it, he would get another one. If the child ate the marshmallow within 15 minutes, he would not receive the second reward. After explaining the rules, the researchers would then leave the child alone in the room. The children displayed frustrations as they waited, clenching their jaws. They made up songs, they hit their heads against the table, they pounded the floor with their feet, they played with the bell, they prayed to the ceiling and more. Many gave up and ate the marshmallow. Experimenters have performed other variations of the test using a different reward system. But on this particular test, after 10 years, in the follow-up studies conducted in 1980, some amazing results appeared. There was a correlation between the children who delayed their gratification by waiting 15 minutes and their academic competence. Further studies in 1990 show that the same children correlated with higher SAT scores. So what does that mean? It means that those who didn't take the instant gratification, they basically had a different outlook in life. And the point I want to make from that is the scriptures tells us how we can be better people, not just Christians, if we work on having patience and long suffering. Because for those children who did wait the 15 minutes and then had 2 marshmallows, they ended up becoming better at education. They had better studying habits and all the other things that go along with that. So when you think about being intolerant and impatient, is there an effect to that? And there is. No doubt, from a medical side, stress, we talked about that before in one of the other classes, that what stress leads to our bodies and our health and all those things. And so what we talked about just a little bit ago with Waffle House or a restaurant where we get frustrated, when we get frustrated, what happens to us, our bodies? Pardon me? We tense, right? Our bodies get tense, our heart rates probably go up, all those other things start happening, and they're probably not good. So it's better for us to remain calm. And so as we study tonight and we think about what Galatians 6, 7, and 8 says, not to be deceived, that God's not mocked. We reap what we sow. And when we say we are a Christian, we have to work on those 9 characteristics in our lives so that every day of our life, we live that character. We live that person who has love, joy, peace, patience, and all the things that are part of the Spirit. The Spirit's living and working in us, and we have to let the Spirit do that, work through us. So when you think about instant gratification, it's something that in our society today, it's a norm, is it not? I mean, we go to the doctor, there's something wrong with us, we want to know what it is right now, don't we? We want instant. We want, COVID. You can take COVID tests at home now. So we're not a society today that's, I'll wait 30 days or something for a response. We want it now. Anybody comments or anything on that, like the marshmallow test? Or
Do you think that marshmallow test potentially bifurcated, it broke the population into those that use logic and reason at a very young age versus those that were more feeling, you know what I mean? Like there's a whole different mindset there. And obviously that stuck with them because of the education and the test results that followed later. And I just wonder, I'm sure you'll probably get some scriptures on that front where, it's a mind over heart situation, and those kids maybe just use logic more than the other kids in that study.
yeah. And I would say that's probably why part of the target and what Jason talked about was what they were shooting for in that test. And I think part of it was the audience or the participants were so young is because they had to provide logic, and some could use it, some couldn't. A lot has to do with how they were raised and their parents and those type of things, which we don't know. But we do know, though, that if we put ourselves in those situations, we're in the same situation a lot of times because I'm hungry. Do I want to grab something real quick, or do I want to wait and have a home-cooked meal at home? Because if I grab something quick now to satisfy my little bit of hunger, I'm not going to be hungry later and eat with the family or whatever else it might be. So it's tough as a Christian when we think about the patience that we need, the long-suffering that we need, especially when we talk about dealing with people. Because we've talked about it before when we talked about love. There are some people who just aren't likable, but we have to love them. In the same way, there are people out there who basically are intolerant all the time, no matter the situation, and we have to realize that whether we're beside them in a car, if your job involves dealing with people, you're dealing with people who sometimes they're irrational and impatient. When you make a phone call now, it tells you how long you have to wait, doesn't it? If you're calling for something, if it's a bank or whoever you're calling, to ask a question about something, it's, your whole time is 5 minutes.
And that seems to be a rough estimate.
Yes, it's a rough estimate. It's a rough estimate. Very rough. I had a situation where maybe a year ago, I had a thing that I was trying to file unemployment. And I called my work to make sure I was still employed. They assured me I was. So I had to call a number. I called the number that I was given, and I basically waited 2 hours. Luckily, I was driving, and I had my phone on charger, but it was 2 hours before I finally got, and it was said, your wait time's 30 minutes. 30 minutes became 30 minutes, became 30, but basically it was 2 hours. And then I get a person who says, I'm in the wrong place. And I said, well, can you just connect me to the number? No, I can't do that, but they put me in sync, and then my whole time is 59 minutes. And so it's easy to get irrational and ill-tempered when you deal with situations like that. And it's nice, though, when at least somebody comes on and they're pleasant. Hey, this is whoever. And at least it tries to change your attitude. And and I wasn't a jerk when the person came on the phone. I was nice and explained that I wasn't trying to file unemployment. I was gainfully employed. But that's more of a norm today, which part of it probably is staffing. They're understaffed with situations. So, but as we look at our class tonight, we're looking at what long-suffering. And the other thing I wanted to look at, in my phone, the Bible I have on my phone, it has a good definition of long-suffering. And basically it talks about it's patient, forbearing, tolerant, uncomplaining. So these are some different, but this is the translations that I use, the Bible. Anyway, it's uncomplaining. It's with having the patience of Job. It's docile, resigned, easygoing, indulgent, charitable, accommodating, forgiving, submissive, differential, meek, docile, compliant, and mild. The opposite would be impatient and complaining. So as we look at our scripture today and we think of the fruit of the Spirit that's there for us, it's how are we going to use it? That's how it's supposed to be used, but how do we use it? So let's look at long-suffering sometimes refers to patience, endurance, steadfast, or perseverance that a Christian is to demonstrate when he's faced with affliction. I think that's what's important here, is what the way a Christian is supposed to demonstrate when they're faced in these situations, because we will be faced in the situations. James 5:7-10 tells us, "Be patient, therefore, brother, until the coming Yeah, and Nikki talks about how that's a lot of us have that fault, that we are impatient, that basically, especially when you're trying to explain something, obviously just coming back from my grandchildren who are 4 and 3, sometimes they don't comprehend what we're trying to say 7, 8, 9, 10 times, but you expect that from children. You don't expect that from other adults, but we have that. You'll have people who will debate you just to debate an issue when it comes to religion. And what's hard to do is to be patient in those situations, because if we lose our patience and get frustrated, then they basically win the battle. And so when you think about what Paul is saying here, it's preach the word, be prepared in season and out of season, correct, rebuke, encourage. So what he's talking about there is that he's correcting somebody and he's rebuking them, but he's also encouraging them with great patience and careful instructions. So I think it's important as we think about how we project ourselves, we have to be patient, because it is easy to lose patience with people who what we think is clear isn't clear to them, or they're just being stubborn. And maybe it's both, but it is tough. Nikki?
I'm very clear when I try to explain something to somebody, and that kind of makes me even more, and I'm not talking about church.
Sure.
And that's what gets me a little more frustrated, because I'm very clear, and I choose my words very carefully, and I say something, and you repeat back to me something that it's like you had a conversation with somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. That seems to be a norm for a lot today.
I don't even be, but it's usually men. What I say, you can listen to me with your hand here, and then we just give a little laugh. Like the guys at work.
I don't need to repeat that. That's the. Yes. 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 And I don't. Yes. Katie? My wife's favorite saying, let me finish. Because I know what she's going to say, so I just butt out and give her the answer before, and I'm usually wrong. But what Katie is saying is that we need to also listen, and that's where patience comes in, is letting a person clearly say what they want to say, and then respond accordingly.
That's a really good point, and I had to learn to do that, and it really does help.
Yeah. Well, and I think, and I've read this verse so many times, but when you really think about what it's saying, when it applies to patience, which is what I'm teaching, it's really important, because it's not just talking to somebody, it's trying to teach them. And when we preach, and we preach the word and we teach, we're trying to get people to respond some way if they need that. Now, maybe they don't need to respond, but we're trying to get people to touch them in some way. So like tonight's class, hopefully you'll leave thinking, okay, I need to work more on my patience. Even when I walk into the store then and there's a line, and if you're ever in a grocery store, don't get behind me, because I always choose the wrong line. At the airport today, I chose the wrong line. The gentleman had 3 backpacks, which weren't his. It was his kids and his wife's, who left their iPad in it. So while you're waiting to go through that, and had to bring them back and do all that. But so it's easy to be impatient with what goes on in the world today. As a Christian, we need to always exemplify who we are, because if we get into a discussion with someone and they say, wait, that guy's a Christian? And he just, and I meant to research this because I've heard it, and I know it's been said from our pulpit, where there was a couple men at a restaurant, and this is way before the pandemic, where the lady was overworked, someone didn't come in, and basically she was having a tough day, and the 2 men basically, one of the gentlemen basically really mistreated her and talked bad of her, just on and on. And then the moral of the story is, she went home to have a Bible study, and the gentleman that was basically rude and obnoxious to her at the restaurant was the Christian coming to give her a Bible study.
Yeah, somebody hears all this.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I've seen it, I've read it, and it was talked out. It's been here. Tim might have been the one that told the story, but it exemplifies what it means to be patient. We don't have a right, if we're Christians. This is Ned 101. If we're Christian, if I'm Christ-like, and I'm going to be like Christ, I am never going to treat another individual, no matter the situation, because of that. While it's easy to do that, is it not? Because that's what we see all around us. But if we are Christ-like, the only example we have of Christ ever, if you want to say lose his temper, was when? Yeah. And that's in, I've got it here because it's in Matthew chapter, it's in John 2, 13 through 17. We have, and the Jews' Passover was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem, and found in the temple those that sold oxen and sheep and doves, and changers of money sitting. And when he had made a scourge of small cords, he drove them out of the temple, and the sheep and the oxen, and poured out the changers' money, and overthrew the tables. And he said unto them that sold doves, take these things hence, make not my Father's house a house of merchandise. And as his disciples remembered this, that it was written, the zeal of thine house hath eaten me up. And it's also in Matthew chapter 21. Other than that time, do we ever see Jesus any way, and that was warranted because of what was there. In the same way that when I talk about being patient, that doesn't mean we have to be abused. It means we have to be smart on how we respond to situations like Katie talked about from a medical situation. You can have a person be very rude to you, and while you don't have to accept all of that, depends on what the situation is, but you don't have to accept that. Even being a Christian, there are boundaries that are still there. So, yes. And Katie says that's an ongoing and developing skills, yes. And that's, again, that as Christians, that's the way we need to be, because we will be in situations that, I guess the point is, I don't want somebody to be surprised that Ned Herald's a Christian, that Ned Herald goes to church, because of the way I act on the golf course, on a ball field, at a grocery store, at a restaurant, whatever the case might be. It shouldn't be that they're shocked that guy's a Christian. And we've talked about it before, where years ago, the WWJD, what would Jesus do, bracelet that people would wear, and you first see it, and you think, oh, that's kind of, and then you hear what comes out of their mouth, and it's not what would come out of Jesus' mouth. So, well, we can wear a badge, but if it's not here, then the badge really is just ornamental piece that we wear. Any other have come? Yes.
I think sometimes the way we are sometimes really looking at from the other person's perspective. I mean, it's difficult sometimes, but I think it's something we really do have to look at because really understanding what long suffering is really about is important because with some people, when you're talking to them, they may not necessarily comprehend what you're saying.
Yep.
They may have some issues that has been in their life that, when they're talking, maybe it's a delay, maybe it takes some time to process
Sure.
what you're saying. And you just never know what that person has been through in their life.
Sure.
And so that's all the more reason for us to really understand what really long suffering is about, so we can work at that, because we just don't know where people come from, and we don't know what they've been through. And it's something that's simple to us may not be very simple to them.
Good point.
And very
Yeah, what Sister Anderson says there is that we don't know what the other person's, we're not walking in their shoes. We don't know how they've been raised. We don't know any developmental issues or what might be. but we have to walk a mile in their shoes and kind of put ourselves in their shoes. And as Katie said, listen more to try to alleviate the situation maybe, but try to explain ourselves better.
Give us an example. I was in the grocery store and behind a lady, and I really wasn't paying a lot of attention to her, but I knew that she was taking a while.
Yeah.
And she had dropped her credit card, and she didn't know that she had dropped it. And so I was trying to tell her that she dropped her credit card, but she wasn't listening. She wasn't paying attention. And then I just leaned over and kind of signaled with my hand, you know, if your credit card is on the floor.
Yeah.
And finally, she got it, she picked it up, and she was trying to finish her transaction and everything. And little did I know, she was dead.
Oh.
She could not hear.
Yeah.
Could not speak.
So until you did the other type of communication, she didn't comprehend. Yeah.
And I was being a little impatient at the time. And then I felt bad that I was being a little impatient.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, she didn't say thank you.
Yeah.
Well, she couldn't talk.
Yeah. 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 Good point. And the point that Sister Anderson makes is that at a grocery store, she's behind a lady who ends up can't hear, but she's trying to talk to her and tell her she dropped her credit card. So you're right. We don't know other people. Now, if it's somebody that you know, that's one thing. But when you're dealing with people that you don't know on a personal basis, then you have to try to figure out what's going on about them, especially if we're trying to communicate with them and try to tell them something, whether it's they dropped their credit card or your shoes untied or whatever it might be. But we have to try to put ourselves in their shoe and figure out who there was. Someone else is going to make a comment?
I was going to say, to me, that they just had a really bad day.
Oh, yeah.
Got some devastating news, and they're not fully comprehending what anybody's saying to them.
Yeah. And Karen makes the point that we don't know what's going on in their lives at the time. Jason?
I think that perspective that we just shared, if you go to any restaurant or service industry right now, you know that they're understaffed. And so
Overworked, understaffed.
Think about from their perspective, they're overworked, they don't have enough help around. You're just making the situation worse.
Yeah.
You may as well just deal with the situation and be happy that you're getting any type of service because there's plenty of places that are just closed.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And Jason makes the point that if they find something open, chances are the person working there is underpaid, overworked, and tired. And us being abusive is not helpful in any way. So when we say we're Christ-like, we need to be Christ-like 24/7. It's not just while we're here. I used to teach driver's training, and I would try to tell kids driving, you don't know the person next to you, what's going on in their mind. I mean, you don't know if this is somebody who's distraught, got bad news, maybe ready to commit suicide. I mean, you don't know. The best thing you could do is just basically stay in your lane and not. Basically, we need to be more compassionate and be more understanding of people, especially because we're Christians. I mean, we should do it anyway. I mean, that should be our American way. And it used to be our American way back. But today, it's not. But for us as Christians, it's not an option. You know, when we look at the fruit of the Spirit, we can't select 2 or 3 of these 9 and say, the love, that's not, joy, yeah, I can be joy, yeah, but peace, I don't know. It's not that way. So if we're Christians, if we have the Spirit in us, we need to let it live and work in us, in our lives that we live. And we can't do that if we don't practice it. And I talked about that before. The athlete who practices and works diligently at their task, whether it's golf or tennis or running or whatever they do, they work at it. Christianity, sometimes we take the easy way out. 3 hours a week on Sunday, an hour on Wednesday, and I'm good. Clock in, clock out, I'm done. But that's not it. As Christians, it's 24/7. Isaiah chapter 40 tells us, But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Isaiah 40:31. The word hope here is translated in another translation, wait. It literally is what it really means. In the Hebrew, it actually is twist together as a rope. So what Isaiah is indicating, that those who intertwine their lives with the life of God are blessed. And that patience is a creative waiting. So I know a lot of people know that verse, and you'll see it on license plates or bumper stickers. But it tells us that we won't grow weary in doing good. We won't get tired if we're doing good. And it's easy to get tired in the world that we live in today because it's go, go, go and do. But if we really do the things that we see and we apply patience to our lives, and we think about how God is working in us and how we can develop more patience if we work at it. But we have to work at it like the athlete works. Ephesians 4:1-2, Paul's in prison, and he says, as a prisoner for the Lord, then I urge you to live worthy of your calling that you received. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Humble and gentle and patient. Is that what we talked about today in the world? Do you see humbleness out there? Do you see gentleness on the road? Nikki, you drive it every day. Yeah, I mean, it's what Christ wants for us, the world doesn't want. The world's the opposite. So any of us who are in, when you deal with people, whether it's medical or service industry, you know what people are like. And we see the worst part of people.
And I have to just take it. And I had to come to the realization that they're not doing that to me. They're doing that to the truck.
Yeah.
And it took me years to get to that point.
Yeah.
And the UPS trading, just somebody cuts me off, I have to back up.
Yep.
I get paid by the hour. So they have a saying, go slow, make dough.
Yep.
That's what they teach you, go slow, make dough.
Yep. Okay, I think that's our time. Anybody else have another point that
I
one?
just want to say real quick that another good thing to remember is a person's perception is their reality. And when I realized that, I got along a lot better with my brother. The one I was talking about back there Sunday, my other brother.
Okay.
Him and I used to butt heads. When I realized, because he said that I was, I forget what he called me, but it wasn't what I was being. Condescending. He said I was condescending. And I thought, to think about our conversation, that's his reality. So I had to go off of that.
Yeah.
And I made a few adjustments, and we got along a lot.
Yeah. It's like she said, we don't understand
Exactly.
the way I say it may not be the way that they're hearing it, and the way that they're basically comprehending it, putting it all together. And
Like he's Jehovah's Witness, and one day he said he was going to. I'm like, that's not true. And he said it just like that.
yeah,
And I had to.
yeah, yeah. And I guess that's part of it. Being patient too is slow to speak, because it's easy. It's easy. Like I said, Denise will say, "Let me finish," because she's not where I'm going. It's not where she was headed. But it's hard to us to let the person speak and do without jumping in.
Well, something triggers you to do something you want to say.
Yeah.
And then you either stop listening to what they're saying or you just jump right in.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Thank you for your comments. Yes. Yeah. Another one.